Okay, this is an interview with Wing Commander P.Y. Biakpara, retired Honorable P.Y. Biakpara, the greatest Nigerian I know. Okay, please, can you just describe yourself briefly in very short words?
Well, an old man
Okay.
who once worked in the Nigerian Air Force and became a politician and is still a politician. That's all I can say about me.
Okay, what can you say about your retirement in the Nigerian Air Force? Was it early
Oh, it
or?
was very abrupt, but no regrets.
Okay,
It came at a time I thought I was at the peak of my career, but I think that was how things were at that time.
Okay, do you think it was political?
I think so, because military cum politica. You know, military was into politics. So they took a lot of decisions that were politically based. I won't say exactly what kind of politics it was, but I know I was a victim.
Okay. And coincidentally, you now came into politics to play the real politics.
Of course, and I'm in the thick of it all.
Okay. And did you think that the kind of politics you were seeing in the Nigerian Air Force is the same type of politics you are playing now?
In different ways, yes, it's still the same ethnic rivalry, individual interests, regional interests, north-south politics, you know, they're all mixed grill of all, depending on a particular time where you are. One particular aspect of the politics will, you know, become prominent.
Okay, now let's talk about your greatest achievement in the Nigerian Air Force. What do you think was your greatest achievement in the Nigerian Air Force?
Well, without blowing my trumpet and without much publicity, even at that time, I think one singular thing I did that a lot of people don't know. They knew it, but they didn't care to know. Was the time the Nigerian Air Force Engineering Department based at Ikeja, who were overseeing the maintenance of the C-130, the Charlie aircraft. You know, we had a big problem where one of our aircraft had engine problem, and it was about either to be shipped back to the United States, or in fact the decision had been taken to bring in about 4 Americans with a new engine and all that to cost the government millions and millions of dollars. But for some reason I was in the logistic wing and I saw a bare engine. And I told them, look, we don't need to spend this kind of money. It can be done locally. That means to refit the engine and then install it into the aircraft. Of course, I told them I could do it, but nobody believed me. In fact, my own officer commanding engineering, I will call him a late group captain, washed his hands off, but he said if I could do it, go ahead, but it's not part of it. In fact, all the pilots in the Group 2 refused to accept the, ability, to accept the ability that an engineer of the Nigerian Air Force can do such a major retrofit, so to say. But I did it, but luckily the then Chief of Air Staff, retired Air Marshal Bello, who was the Chief of Air Staff at that time, was the only one who believed in my ability. And of course, I removed my usual Air Force officer's clean uniform, put on the overall, went under the aircraft, and I think for about 2 months, I gathered some of the very good engineering officers who agreed to work with me, because some of them said, no, if they work with me and something happens, their jobs are on the line, so many of them refused to even work with me. But then the good ones worked with me, and we were able to fit this engine back. First of all, built the engine on ground, built it up on ground, and then fitted it on the aircraft. But then came the real problem. No pilot wanted to test fly it. So I had to, then Chief of Air Staff, like I said, came down all the way from the pinnacle of the Air Force to the air base in Ikeja. It was at that point, out of, you know, would I say, loyalty to the Chief of Air Staff, the commander on the ground, then AVM Nantiti, late Nantiti, decided to join the Chief of Air Staff. But they insisted that I fly with them on the test flight. But out of stubbornness myself, I refused because I know it was not a mandatory thing for an engineer who repaired an aircraft to fly with the pilot. That is to show that they don't believe in my ability, and I refused to fly with them. Not because I was afraid, I was only trying to make a point. But of course, the Chief of the Air Staff flew with the commander on the ground. And until I left the Air Force, that aircraft, 916, if I remember it correctly, either 916 or 915, C-130 Hercules, was flying until I left the Air Force in 1990.
Okay, since this achievement, has anyone else in the Air Force or in the Nigerian airspace done this kind of thing before? Till now?
I will be surprised if they could. In fact, if any engineer in Nigeria, both in the Air Force and in the civil, could do such a thing. These are the things that they normally spend millions of dollars to take aircraft abroad to do. In fact, in the case where the engine was faulty, there was no way they could even fly the aircraft. So normally they will bring in expatriates, many, pay their hotel bills, pay them millions of dollars to do. I did it with my crew.
Okay, yeah, I forgot to ask you. Can you please tell us where and where you were trained for this kind of, where and where?
Well, the training is multifaceted. Helicopter in Germany, Jaguar in UK, C-130, the aircraft itself involved in the United States, Gulfstream in the United States. So it was experience from all these, but particularly for the C-130, it was Lockheed in the United States.
Okay, okay. These companies that trained you, can you just mention a few of them, the companies? You
Lockheed,
mentioned it.
like I said,
Okay.
Lockheed, Gulfstream,
Okay.
Savannah, Jaguar in United Kingdom, and then also Bolco. That is the helicopter company in Germany. I don't know whether they are still operating, but Bolco, Bloom in Germany.
Okay, so which advice do you have for the Nigerian Air Force today, so that they can?
Is it only Nigerian
Okay,
Air
sorry,
Force?
the government of
the
Nigeria.
Nigerian Aviation.
Aviation, okay.
Is to believe in their engineers. That is one of the biggest problems. They don't believe in their engineers to the extent that minor things are taken abroad to do. Can you imagine that when an instrument goes, one small instrument goes bad, instead of looking at it, it's not as if, and if you continue to avoid to do these things for years and years, look at now, Nigerian aviation is over 50 years. Up to today, ordinary minor C check, not to talk of D check, are done abroad. Then when are we going to start doing our own thing? Nigeria and Malaysia we trained together in Germany on the helicopter. Not few years after we trained, Malaysia was able to assemble the helicopter in their own country. But Nigeria, well, of course, those helicopters, we've scrapped them since. There's nothing near assembling an helicopter. But what I'm trying to say is that we have to believe in our engineers. And the engineers too have to believe in themselves. Like in this case I spoke about. The engineers around me, many of them, didn't believe in themselves. Of course, it's for the fear of losing their job in case something goes wrong. But of course, you trust me. I wasn't bothered whether I lost a job or not. I just believed in what I could do, what I've been taught, and what I knew I was able to reproduce.
Thank you very much.